All right, welcome back, folks, to yet another episode of Fresh Juice, an indie game podcast. I am one of your hosts, Tommy Fresh, and you are all juice heads today, and we are joined, as always, it is
Matty Juice Heads. Now, what's going on, everybody? Good to have you here. Another episode of the Fresh Juice podcast. We're going to be talking about a few different indie games today, which I'm pretty excited about. We usually cover one, Tom, but today's a little bit of a special episode, you could say. So I'm real excited about it.
Yeah, it's a good one. You know, we had a busy week, and we'll talk about it actually in a few moments here. But so we decided, hey, let's check out some demos. You know, kind of talk about what's coming up, some ideas. So we each checked out a demo, and then we also checked out a one mutual demo that we both played. Or it's not even really a demo; it's just like a little prologue.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and it's fun. But we're going to talk about that in a few. But before we do, first, if you haven't followed us on socials or checked out the Discord, all of that information is on the screen or in the show notes, whether you're listening to this or watching this. Now, for anybody watching and find that it might be hard to catch this on the go sometimes on YouTube, we are also on all audio platforms. Not all. A lot of audio platforms.
A lot of them. The ones that matter.
And if there's one that you listen to and that we're not on, just set that we can fix that. I think.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We can. We are making actual promises here. We will definitely be able to fix that. If there's so many podcast platforms too. It's hard to keep up, but I'm sure we've missed some at some point.
It is crazy. I mean, it's a little bit of a tangent, but like at first I was just like, I listened to it on Apple Podcasts. That's what I just used to listen to stuff. And then I started to listen a little bit on Spotify, but I use Spotify for music mostly. And then our friend Bags mentioned, I don't even know what that is called, Pocket Cast. He kept talking about Pocket Cast. And I'm like, I got to check out this Pocket Cast if this guy's going to, talk about it all the time. And it actually is pretty awesome. I do like Pocket Cast. So that's what I listen on now, all my podcasts. But you guys do whatever you want.
Yeah, whatever it is, doesn't matter. You can, we'll call you. We'll just do the podcast on the phone. If you don't have an app, maybe you have a flip phone. If you want us to, I'll just set up a few phones here and we'll just call you.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. Call in, folks.
That would be cool.
Now, how was your week? What's going on with you?
Yeah, it was good. Man, work's just been crazy. Ever since the new year started, it's just been like so much going on. My days are like packed, unfortunately. But the weekend was fun. I went to Atlantic City, did a little gambling, didn't win anything. Saw a comedy show, saw Tom Segura. We got some tickets from my sister-in-law for Christmas to go see him. So that was a great show. Always a funny guy. His openers were a little interesting. They didn't really. I think they're still working on their craft a bit, typically with openers. But he was great, and yeah, had an awesome time. And then Sunday, just kind of chilled, watched a little bit of like the flag football Pro Bowl stuff going on, which was fun. And yeah, just relaxing and nothing too crazy going on outside of work. Although we did have a tree. We had a tree in our backyard. Well, we have a few trees, but we had one that was like splitting, like all the way down, right down the middle. And we have a buddy who he does like tree care work. And he came over. We weren't even home. We were like still like on our way home. He came over like one of his helpers, and he climbed the tree. He showed us a video. He like climbed up like the neighboring tree and like kind of had straps and like used ratchet straps to pull the tree back together. And he basically cut like 60% of the tree down. So now it's just like a big stump out there. And like I have a bunch of firewood I got to chop up. But it was pretty wild. People who do tree care work are, I hope they have insurance, because like it is sketchy up there. But yeah, so I guess that was a little highlight of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I have a friend whose father does it now. He retired from like the state police and then just started doing tree work and happened to lose a finger when he was doing tree work. And he still does it. He still does it. I'm like, what are you doing, man? It's like, how many years do you have left? You're just gonna, whatever. It is what it is. But I don't envy that job. I'm glad that people do it. I need to get some trees taken down. We have a lot of rotten trees in the yard, but they're technically not on our property. So I want to see if the it's the water company's property.
Yeah,
they should take.
Oh
it down.
yeah,
but
that's interesting because we share the border with like the water company too.
Yeah,
here, but it was on our side, unfortunately. This one. Yeah,
but it's actually, definitely on theirs.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, they should, but the way that works. It takes forever for like anything township related, right, to get done. Politics, But we actually, speaking of rotting trees, the tree that was cut down is like a black locust tree or something, and apparently it doesn't rot. Like it's known as like a weed tree, like a tree that just never goes away. It doesn't rot at all. That's what my buddy told me, at least. So
that's crazy.
So that's pretty cool. Yeah, I was worried like after he kind of left like the stump there that it was gonna just like be a mess eventually, but he's not. He's like, no, it's just gonna stay exactly like that.
Wow.
Like, hell yeah,
wow.
That's awesome. So if you want to plant some new trees, I guess try black locust or whatever, white locust, whatever it was called. I don't even know. Locust was in the name.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's pretty awesome. And I think this is a great time, actually, to announce that we are switching the podcast from indie games to trees. This is a tree podcast. We're talking about trees for the rest. I'll tell you what, an ash, very nice. But
yeah, oak. I mean, come on. Mahogany? Is that a tree?
I think so. That's a kind of wood, so I have to assume it's a tree. We're obviously not great tree podcasters, but we'll get there. So
yeah, we'll get there.
But well, that's nice, man. I didn't watch any of the flag football or anything like that. But I used to actually watch a lot of Tom Segura's podcast, and then it's just so focused on the visuals that like I just can't listen to a lot of podcasts that are really focused on visuals. Yeah. So I had to stop. Although there were always some funny moments, and they usually had some pretty good guests. So. But my weekend, I went to Hartford, Connecticut. I go to nice places, folks. I am going to the nicest places that you can ever imagine. Hartford is a wonderful city. I think it's the capital. Is
Hartford.
it? Hartford?
I don't know. Who knows capitals anymore? Yeah, they switch all the time.
Connecticut, who cares about it? That's a drive-through state if I've ever seen one. Now... it was SCG Con, which is Star City Games Convention. That's what it stands for. They had a Flesh and Blood tournament, The Calling Hartford. I played in that. I didn't do well, but I did it well enough, but I didn't do well enough to like convert into day 2. But I played games. I hung out with my buddy Gary, my buddy Greg. I got to see a lot of great people from the Flesh and Blood community, meet some new people, meet some people that listen to my other podcast, which is always really cool. Got to hang out with this guy named Az from Go Again Gaming, who I've known since I started doing content for Flesh and Blood. He's from Swindon, England, and he decided, for whatever reason, this guy's crazy. I mean, I love him. He's going to be on my other podcast this week. He's getting off the plane from Connecticut and then hopping onto the Fresh and Buds podcast. So that's how crazy this guy is. But he decided, I want to go to the States. Let's go to Connecticut. Why not? So, but it was really, really fun. I got to experience like a real YouTuber, right? Go Again Gaming is like a real YouTube channel. He vlogs. He had a GoPro. Yeah. He was GoProing everything. We were at a bar drinking, and he was like, and I was like telling him how us Americans drink. And he was like, oh, normally I just drink and then like get really, really, really drunk. And that's it. And we're like, no, we have traditions. We got to say cheers and stuff like that. We have to do things. We have to. I ordered a Jameson shot and a Guinness next to each other. I was just like a shot and a beer. And he's like, oh, what's that then? You have one and then the other? Yeah, that's it. That's what I do. That's like, you chase it. It's called a chaser, like a sidecar, right? And, turned him onto that. And, kind of
nice.
Hopefully was not too much of a bad influence on him. But it was a fun weekend.
Pointing him in the right direction. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, I was showing him how real Americans are. No, he's awesome. He's a good friend. But it was a good time overall, and work is back to being crazy. This is a hell week again. Last week was pretty hellish as well, so it's been pretty wild. But we got a great episode for you all. I can't wait.
Yeah.
But we have some news. I mentioned the Discord. Please check out the Discord. It's a good place. People are recommending games we never even heard of. People are asking for recommendations. So if you want to get some recommendations, go in there. People are gonna help. So
and those games we have slated to be episodes eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking for us to check out a game and maybe you're not 100% sure if you want to get it, we'll get it and we'll tell you all about it. So definitely join that Discord and recommend some games for us.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Please do work for us. We don't want to work at all. No, I'm kidding. We do have to play the games and review them, and we take extensive notes. But we also take extensive notes of the news. And you put here that Steam Next Fest is starting February 5th and going to the 12th. Now, this is coming out the 7th. So currently it's already going, but you have a week.
Yeah, so this is one of the coolest things I think that Steam does, and I know people listening, you probably already know what's going on because it's slathered all over. Slathered? It's all over the homepage of Steam, but
plastered, I think is what you were trying to say.
Plastered, that's what it is. Plastered, not slathered.
Barbecue sauce.
Yeah. I guess it works too in a way, but it's a great way to play demos for upcoming games. Which is actually kind of what we're doing in this episode today. We've got some of these demos are for upcoming games, but definitely check it out. It's a great way to support indie devs as well. If you like any of those demos that you play, add them to your wish list. That really does help out indie devs. And I've seen a bunch of people tweeting about it on the Fresh Juice Twitter. I was going to say Discord, but on the Fresh Juice Twitter. And we also, I recently posted a tweet today trying to see if any indie devs wanted to share their games. So there might be some cool stuff that you're going to find on Twitter from the Steam Next Fest as well, but definitely check it out. I think they do it. I want to say they do it a few times a year. I'm not really sure on the cadence of it, but it only lasts about a week. So, and I believe after that week is done, those demos are no longer on the store. So get them in while you can, play them over the weekend, and let us know in the Discord if you found anything really good. There's so many demos. It's hard to really kind of cover them all, but if you find any gems, let us know. But it's just a really cool thing that Steam does.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I know that Goons is a big part of it. We talked about that game that we found at PAX last year. Hopefully that means it's slated to release soon, and perhaps we can review it. But Goons is a really cool arcade hockey game that has a lot of Mario Party, or even just Mario sports feel with power ups and stuff like that. So yeah, check it out. I mean, it's a really cool thing, and it's a great way to kind of discover some stuff that you normally wouldn't have because things get lost. There are times when if we don't have a game for the next week to review, we'll be looking at Steam and it gets overwhelming. It's just such a vast library of things. So it's pretty crazy. Now, next, I saw this thing on TikTok and I wanted to see if it was a real thing or just something that somebody posted on TikTok, but it was a real thing. So a study done by Bonus Finder, which is a gaming and a gambling site, did a study to find out what the most stressful video games are. And they measured it by average heart rate increase over a 30-minute period. And then they also did a separate measurement of peak heart rate increase over 30 minutes. So the number, let's count out the top 5 here.
Yeah.
Top 5 most stressful games, according to this study, on average heart rate increase. And number 5, you have Fortnite. So I don't know what the actual, I guess they were looking at AAA games mostly. I mean, Fortnite, whatever, it is, right? And
had the most data probably, for these games. Yeah,
exactly. And they probably, and you could almost read this as genres in a way. This is
true,
kind of the genres that. So Fortnite, number 5. After that, Dark Souls. Not too surprised that Dark Souls on the list. I would expect it to be higher. Call of Duty. I guess that's just the entire franchise. Whatever.
Yeah.
followed by FIFA football, which is a huge game. FIFA it's got to be bigger than Madden, right? Easily. I mean,
I would say so. Yeah,
soccer's
definitely.
bigger than football. Like, I mean, that's just how it goes.
Yeah.
And then number 1, Mario Kart.
Ooh.
What do you make of this list?
Listen, I have had very stressful moments with Mario Kart. Mario Kart 8 was the first game I actually started streaming on Twitch like years ago. And there are so many recorded moments from there, especially playing online, where like you are getting hit with like 3 red shells in a row and you're going from first to 8th place in like the last lap. I gotta tell you, my heart, it's just, I think it's just out of frustration. And I think a lot of these too is like, it's saying stressful, right? I think there's different reasons for the heart rate increases with some of these. Like, like Dark Souls, or I should say maybe like FIFA is like really stressful, but I would say like maybe Mario Kart and Dark Souls is like, it's stressful, but I think it's more like the rage that comes afterwards that's really raising that heart rate, But Mario Kart, really interesting to be at the top of the list. I agree. I think Dark Souls, I thought it would be higher, at least for like the average heart rate increase. But Mario Kart, interesting. I am surprised that Madden isn't on the list at all, because I do see a lot of people get really upset with Madden, but I guess maybe they don't take it super seriously, so maybe that's why. But I also think people don't really take Mario Kart super seriously. Like, there's not really like a esports for Mario Kart, right? Where like you're gonna be stressed out, I would imagine. It's just like the rage afterwards, at least for me. But it's definitely did not expect Mario Kart to be at the top of the list for this.
So it does change when you get to peak heart rate. So like number 5 is FIFA, which peaks at 67%, whatever BPM increase. Number 4 after that is Street Fighter, which wasn't on the top 5 average, comes at 71.88%. And then Mario Kart dips down to 73%. And then which at number 3, which is still pretty high, number 2 and 1 have the highest, like a high peak BPM by 20%.
Yeah.
After like more than Mario Kart. Number 2 is Fall Guys, which is an indie game, right?
Yeah, it is.
There you go.
Yeah.
Indie game.
We made it.
And that was 95.11%. And then Dark Souls was number 1 at 98.44%. Interesting. Yeah. So my thoughts here, I think Mario Kart probably has the highest average, because not only are there super high variance moments in the game where even if you were in first, you could end up being in last, but there's also those indicators that will be firing off like ding, 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 like if you have a red shell behind you or a blue shell, and then it happens throughout the whole game, like a whole, like 30 minutes of playing, you're just going to hear that all the time. It's just like every time you're going to be like, fuck, I just got to first, please do not hit me, and where Dark Souls is probably like really like spiky, right? Like where there's moments in the boss battles where you think you have it and you probably don't, and you lose, and it's pretty interesting stuff though. You would think definitely. A hobby would be relaxing.
Right, yeah, exactly. I'd be really interested to see like top 20 games here, just to see what kind of made the list. And Fall Guys is interesting that it's on kind of the peak heart rate increase, but not so much the average heart rate increase, just because Fall Guys is also one of those games where like it's there's a lot of variance like as you're playing, right? Like you're just you just want to finish in like the top 20 or whatever it is to move on to the next level. So it's pretty interesting that it's second to Dark Souls and also really close to Dark Souls. I never thought I'd see Dark Souls and Fall Guys so close in any sort of ranking. But that is this is great. And I love, have you ever watched like the streamers that like have the heart rate sensor on, like regardless of what they're playing? I always love watching that. Especially they do it all the time for Dark Souls, but now I have to see it for Fall Guys, and I got to check if there's any Mario Kart streamers out there that got the heart rate thing, because I need to see the data behind it.
Yeah. I would be interested to see what the the qualifiers were for the study. But I mean, a lot of this makes sense. Like Fall Guys, to my knowledge, like if you're like the last like 3 people, like that is probably pretty intense, right? I've watched the streams. I've seen how insane it gets, and people are just like losing their minds. So very cool.
Yeah, they actually, it looks like they did have, it says right here, like there were limits on how many games could be tested for this study. And it's interesting to look at the full list to see what did not make the top 5. And there's stuff in here like Uno, The Sims, Minecraft, Animal Crossing. Who the hell's getting stressed out with any of those games? Maybe The Sims if your character dies, but
Yeah.
Uno.
Well, wait, Minecraft nighttime. If you're like, oh, I don't have or I have all my diamond equipments, or I mined a bunch of diamonds, I might get killed before I get back to my base or something like that. I get that. Animal Crossing, definitely not. What I mean,
yeah. I don't, unless maybe you're mad at the Tom Nook mortgage. Maybe that's stressing you out. You don't got enough bells, But yeah, really interesting study here. Love seeing this stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I saw that, and I was actually happy that it was a real study and not something that someone on TikTok had just made up. But very cool. What's this Deep Rock Galactic Survivors?
Yeah, so I thought this is a really interesting, just like announcement. And if for those who don't know, or Tom, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Deep Rock Galactic, but it's essentially a co-op kind of like dwarf themed mining game where I know our buddy Pat plays a ton of it. Pat and Kevin, they're playing all the time. They might be playing right now. It's essentially a game where you're going and mining different things. It's all like procedural levels every time you jump in. It's a lot of fun. It's a really great replay value for this game. And something interesting that they're doing, the developers are doing, is they're releasing on February 14th, Valentine's Day. Just a reminder for everybody out there who needs to get a gift on Valentine's Day. But Deep Rock Galactic Survivor is releasing in early access, and this is a Vampire Survivors like that Deep Rock Galactic is doing, which is really interesting because we played Time Survivors a few weeks ago on the show, which is also a Vampire Survivors like. And this got me thinking, is this a new trend? Are there going to be more games, especially indie games, that are going to make a variant and a spin-off of their game that is a Vampire Survivors like? I think it's a really interesting concept, honestly. And I was trying to think of like what other games could do this, but Deep Rock is definitely one I'll be checking out.
It's one of those things where it's almost safe, but also really smart to use existing IP to like just catapult it into a different genre. I think like a good example is like Shovel Knight has that, like Shovel Knight, and they have a lot of expansions for that, but they also did like a not side scroller, but like vertical slide, or what would you call it, vertical scroller, where you kind of like digging downward rather than like the regular side scroller. And then I think Enter the Gungeon did the same thing. It's like rather than make a whole new game with this kind of style of game, you just I'll just make a version of it of something that we already have. So like the existing fans of the game will want to play it. It's really smart. I think we were even talking about like when we talked about Time Survivors that this is going to be a bigger genre at some point, or that we're going to start seeing more, and it was not that soon after that this gets announced. So I'm all for it. I want to see where people can take that genre, because it on the surface it feels very one note maybe.
Yeah, so it's limiting. Yeah, for sure.
But that's to our caveman brains. If like really, really good game designers are working on it, maybe we could see something that really takes the genre into the next level. Obviously Vampire Survivors, classic, right? But look at the Battle Royale genre, right? We had Battle Royales, and then Fortnite took it to the next level, right? So is there going to be a game that takes the Vampire Survivors like into the next level? Is the real question here.
Yeah, no, a great question. And I think Deep Rock is poised to potentially be that game. You know, it's going to be $10 from what I'm seeing in the article. Great price point, I think, for that. Even though I would maybe that's a little premium for Vampire Survivors, like compared to the other stuff we've seen, but it is Deep Rock, and there is a strong fan base for this game, and a strong fan base for dwarves. I know that sounds weird, but there was this whole story that happened recently where they were trying to get the dwarf tag on Steam to be an actual like tag for a genre, and they were denied for it. But what you can do on Steam, and I guess this is a PSA to everybody out there, is if you're a fan of dwarf games, you can manually add a tag on Steam. And if enough people add that tag, it will become an actual tag. So there's tags for like vampires. Like I think Vampire Survivors has a tag that says vampires in it. So if you want to see all games that have vampires in it, go for it. So I think like the pull that this game has, and if that actually becomes a thing, this could be bigger than Vampire Survivors. And something else that I'm seeing here is Deep Rock is even doing a roguelite spinoff called Deep Rock Galactic Rogue Core that was announced last year. So they're just doing everything. They're dipping their toes in all the genres right now. But I got a question. I got a question for you, Tom.
Yeah.
What game would you like to see have a spinoff that's a Vampire Survivors like off the top of your head?
Animal Crossing.
Oh my god!
Could you imagine? I mean,
you
know, if I'm thinking of like a huge IP that like I just want to think of the most ridiculous thing, right? Animal Crossing would be so cool, especially if they could make it very Animal Crossing-y. Like, and that's kind of what I hoped. I mean, New Horizons was great, right? It was a great game. There was part of me that hoped that you can go on like some kind of missions, almost like Stardew Valley. You can kind of do stuff like that, not missions, but you can kind of go into a little bit of a dangerous zone rather than just kind of doing the simple farming life. But yeah, that would be cool. But I think that you could probably do it with a lot of great indie games. Like I think like Dead Cells comes to mind here. Hades comes to mind as well. Out of the most recent like bangers out there. I
would love to see like a Cuphead one personally. I think that could be really cool, even just cool looking, but like they were so creative with that game, with like the way the bosses and the enemies are. Like that could be a really cool Vampire Survivors, like if they were to do something like that. But yeah,
I think it would be really neat. I mean, it's a fun exercise to kind of like think about, but I want to see it, but I want to see something different, right? Like, I mean, just off the top of my head, again, Leica. If they somehow made like a motorcycle game that was a Survivor, would be kind of neat. We've seen stuff like it, so like I'm just kind of interested to see where the genre can go, and I'm sure as we do this podcast, we're going to see a ton of it. So
yeah.
That's the news, folks. Let's talk about some demos that we played, because we played some demos. What do you want to do? Time for Morp first, since we both played it?
Yeah, let's do some Time for Morp.
Or Time to Morp.
About it. Time to Morp. Sorry, it's not Time for Morp. Yes. Time to Morp First Contact, developed by Team Halfbeard and published by Yogscast Games. Yogscast, for those who don't know, I don't watch them, but I think they're like a big YouTube channel. Something like that, right? They got a lot of media. They're like a media network now, I guess, basically. And this game's actually coming out in about a month on March 7th. And yeah, like Tommy mentioned earlier in the show, this is less than a demo, or I guess more than a demo. It's more of a prologue to the actual Time to Morp game. Yeah, Tom, what'd you think about it? What kind of game can the people expect if they were to boot this up?
Yeah, so we're not going to do a traditional review here, because we both agree that it's not fair to judge a game really on the demo. I mean, we can judge on whether we think we're excited for the final product, and that's what we're going to kind of talk about here, but we can't like judge it on all of its merits because it's just a demo. But the demo this prologue was cool, and it was very functional, and it seemed very fleshed out. I mean, that's what you're going to get with a prologue anyway instead of a demo. it was cute. It's like a cute Minecrafty thing with like almost some Pal World stuff going
Yeah, I
on.
knew
With,
you were gonna say that.
I mean, which I think is probably a coincidence on their part because of the proximity of it being released. So you kind of get dropped into this world. You kind of learn how to mine stuff and like gather resources. It's not that hard. It's pretty straightforward. You kind of mine these resources to build things, and then you build like fences, and you have to like create areas where you can kind of not like capture or like use these what would they call morphs?
Morps, yeah, they're morps.
Yeah, like use these morphs to kind of do your bidding in a way, or like help farm stuff and kind of evolve them as well. It was neat. Like I couldn't dive into a lot because I just didn't have the time, but I thought that it was very cute and pretty straightforward. I had some issues with some stuff, but that maybe because I don't play these games, these kind of what would you call them? Survivor, not vampire survivors, but like a survival game in a way.
Yeah, it's survival like, I would say. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So
Um,
yeah, I had some issues with like the placement of things, but it was a very cool experience. I think you get the most out of it if you're playing co-op though, because that seems to be where they want to go. They want you and one, two, or three other friends. I don't know how many max you can do to kind of like land on these. It seems procedurally generated worlds,
yeah.
and kind of capture these morphs, build stuff, and kind of have a Minecraft like experience, right? Like it's not hardcore in by any means. I mean, unless you think Minecraft is hardcore, and if you think that, sure, I could be. I've died a lot in Minecraft. I mean, they have a hardcore mode. I will say that.
Yeah.
So I liked it. It's a little bit too cutesy for me. I looked at it, but like I think it has a lot of potential, and I think it's definitely worth checking out. I think it's a game that, especially this prologue, it's free, and you get like actual content with it. It's not like free demo where it's very buggy or anything like that. It didn't feel like that, right? It was fully fleshed out. It's kind of giving you a taste of what's to come, and it seems like a game that you're going to get so much out of, right? And that's what I really liked about it. So I don't really know what to say about this game. It was like weird. Yeah. It's like a weird game.
It's a weird one.
But there's something about it that's very charming, and that I think is going to capture both the imagination and the hearts of a lot of people.
Yeah. That was a great ending right there. That was like a political speech right there. I was just like, oh my God, yeah. I agree. But yeah, no. So I had a little bit of a different experience with the game. It's a very cute game. Like Tommy mentioned, you're kind of building these areas that you essentially are trapping the morphs in. There's different morphs that can kind of mine different things, similar to Pal World. And for me, like I've played a lot of a game called Astroneer. I've brought it up on the show before. This to me is a similar experience to Astroneer, other than the fact that you can't terraform, and there's no like oxygen. Like you're not really. I would say Astroneer is a little bit more on the hardcore side. Not super hardcore, but there are some hardcore elements to it. So it's kind of replacing the hardcore and the terraforming aspect of Astroneer and introducing morphs, introducing these creatures that mine for you and store things for you in storage containers and allow you you can build like research stations and a bunch of different things. Scanner, use your scanner to explore, to figure out kind of what's around you. Honestly, my biggest issue with the demo or with this prologue, and hopefully it's something they do end up fixing, but I thought the UI was kind of confusing. I thought it was a little bit all over the place. Like I think that can be kind of fine tuned a bit, especially like it kind of felt like your quests that they kind of have set up for you, even like the tutorial quests, they were just kind of like floating in like
Hmm.
the middle of my screen almost. And I didn't really realize that those were the steps that I needed to be taking until probably like far too like much into the game. I just I didn't realize that that was supposed to be going on. And for me, you know, I've already expressed like my issues with like a game like Pal World, where like, and even like Fortnite Survival was kind of in a way where like they're integrating, you know, these AI NPCs that help you. And I'm not really into that with like survival games. Like I like to do it all myself or like play with friends and we all do it kind of together. You know, if there's a little bit of kind of like the NPCs helping you out, like I'm okay with that. Or if it's something I personally build that then like is like an auto miner or something like that, like I'm okay with that. So this game, you know, I would say if you're a fan of Pal World, you'll probably enjoy this game. It's a kind of a lighter version of it. You know, it's a cute version like Tommy mentioned. But and I do think there is potential there. I really for me, I would like the UI to be cleaned up a bit. Thought the gameplay was fine. You know, walking around the world, I think it is procedural, which is cool. So you kind of get a unique experience with every world you jump into. But yeah, it's essentially just a game where you're going around finding new morps and kind of trapping them in your fences, and they are mining different resources for you. And you need to make sure the morps are happy, right? So like they got to have enough space. They got to be together with other morps that they like. So that was something I had to figure out. And I guess like you know, so really my big issues with the game were like the UI, which like I hope they can fix for like the full game. Like I said, you know, like we mentioned, we're not really digging too hard at these games or anything like that. It's just a sample of the full game. But the other thing that like kind of sort of I understand why it's in the game, but it just to me, I think it could have been done a little bit better is like the grid. So when like
Hmm.
you're placing down fences, there's this grid that they show you in the world, and it doesn't necessarily like kind of line up with the other items in the world. Like I felt like when I played Fortnite, for example, or like Minecraft, is like there's a grid in that world, obviously, but it kind of made sense of like, okay, yeah, I'll build around this object with this, you know, this grid system. It kind of felt like the grid was like not lined up with like the items I had to end up building around. So it was like this weird kind of collision of like organic elements that were placed in the game and like this structured grid that were like layered on top of each other. So that was something I just had to get used to. I don't think that's something that like really takes a lot away from the game, but it was something I had to be like, okay, like I can't, like I started out by, you know, there's kind of these different nodes of like resources that you build the fences around. I was building like a little tiny fence around each one. I didn't realize that you had to build like a big fence around everything and then put the morps in there. So that was something that I think like with the tutorial system maybe could be improved, or maybe I'm just an idiot. I don't know. But just like those little things that like I think can be tweaked and made better. But I do think the core of this game is good. And like I mentioned, if you enjoy Pal World, I think this is a kind of a lighter version of that game that you might enjoy. And honestly, I didn't even realize that there was a co-op option. I thought it was like just single player. So like that also changes everything. You know, like if you're playing with a friend, it always makes the game better, right? So yeah, but overall, you know. I thought it was a fine kind of prologue, but for me, I don't think it's going to be a game that I'm going to pick up like when it actually comes out. You know, that's kind of where I'm standing on it right now.
Yeah, I mean there is a lot of their marketing is definitely marketed towards the co-op, and I think I felt that when I was doing it because when I was playing, it felt like when you got to a point where you were capturing morphs and having them do things, it was a lot to manage by yourself. I think that was like the biggest thing there. And I think the co-op experience would probably be a lot better. And yeah, you're right though. It for the Pal World fans that are looking for something that maybe isn't shooting, this is
Yeah.
and maybe Pal World fans that perhaps like Minecraft, this is a nice, happy medium where you kind of have some agency with the NPCs a little bit more so than maybe Minecraft, which is a little bit sandboxy, where this is sandboxy, but you can like kind of really have things really do stuff for you.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool. I think there, but like I said before, I think it's going to really land with a lot of people. So if any of that sounds like it's your jam, I would definitely check out the prologue. I mean, it's a zero opportunity cost, other than time, I guess, which time is valuable. But
and it's time to morp. So
it is time to morp. So there you go. You can't really argue with that. So we talked about Norps, and we've now talked about Morps. So what's the next Orp we're going to be talking about? Stay tuned. So what demo did you play on your own?
Yeah,
so we each played a demo.
Yes. So the demo that I played is for a game called Lone Fungus 2. And just to preface, I have not played Lone Fungus 1. That is a game on Steam that's $20. This is developed and published by Basti Games. So hopefully I'm saying that right. And I believe the release date, I couldn't find it, but it's to be announced. So Lone Fungus 2, not sure when that will be coming out, but this was actually one of the games from the event we talked about last week, the games in Sweden, that had a lot of great upcoming demos. So this was an interesting one. It's a platformer Metroidvania that is kind of in a retro style. You play as a little fungus guy. His name is, oh man, what is his name? His name might be Fungus. I totally forget. Green Cap. His name is Green Cap. And he has a little green cap of his fungus head. And I just before getting into like all the gameplay elements and everything, I enjoyed the hell out of this game. I don't think it's perfect. I think that there are some things that they can improve on, but it honestly got me to the point where I want to try Lone Fungus 1. And interesting enough, Lone Fungus 2 is actually a prequel to Lone Fungus 1. Technically from a story standpoint. So it says that on their Steam page that like these are the events leading up to Lone Fungus 1, which is really interesting. So I guess Green Cap is also the main character in the first game. He's the Lone Fungus. But there are some things, like I mentioned, that like it doesn't really give you a tutorial, which is something that, maybe I don't expect a demo to have, but I would like some sort of basic kind of tutorial of what to kind of do in the game. But it wasn't too hard to figure out. You're essentially, like I said, it's a platformer where you have a few different options for attacks that you can do. You can find different items in the game. Like you start out with a whip, so you're using a whip to attack everything. You can destroy enemies. You can't jump on enemies like Mario or anything like that. You get an ability to dash through enemies. I found an axe. You can use an axe that has like a kind of a lob ability. You get a spear where you can kind of throw spears. So each item that you find kind of has a different mechanic to it, which is really cool. And then you also start with, and this is a really interesting part of the game for me, is you start with a mushroom that heals you. But the way that it heals you is you actually you collect these blue orbs as you continue through the levels. And you can either like break things in the level or defeat enemies, and you collect these blue orbs, and that builds up your mana bar. I'll just call it a mana bar. I'm not sure what they're actually calling it here. And then you use that mushroom to heal you, and it drains like your mana just to heal you. So you kind of, in a way, you're not really like having a set number of like consumables to heal. You're really kind of building up your heals as you play through the game, which I thought was really interesting. You can use it to just heal a little bit of yourself if you want to. If you don't want to use all your mana, you can use it to heal yourself fully, whatever it is. But you also have to remember some of the items that you find also use mana, like the throwing axe. You have to use a portion of your mana just to throw one of them, even though it does a good amount of damage. And one of the things just from the gameplay side for this game that I loved, and one of the reasons I do want to check out the first game, is the movement is so fluid in this game. I felt like I could fly through the levels. I didn't necessarily have to beat every single enemy once I kind of figured out where I was going. But I really enjoyed how fluid the movement in this game was. It was kind of exactly what I was hoping for looking at the gameplay. And even kind of something that like adds to the fluidity of the movement is like with the whip, for example, you're not necessarily like stuck in like a horizontal whip only. You can whip up, you can whip diagonally, so you can kind of jump through the level and like hit things on the wall if you need to, that are like maybe not directly above you or next to you, but they're kind of diagonal to you. So I thought that was really a really good choice. It's something they probably didn't have to do, but it made it so that like I could figure out how to get through a level. I'd be like, okay, I'll jump here, and like I might not be close enough to hit this thing, right above me, but I can at least kind of reach out diagonally and see if I can hit it. And that usually worked. The boss battle that I came across was really great. It was, I thought the music was kind of like old school, like retro vibes. I didn't really know how to like, kind of felt like I was playing like an arcade machine, which was really cool. Yeah, the boss battle, like I mentioned, is great. They actually have been teasing some boss battles on their Twitter, and they kind of blend this like three, at least for this one that I saw, they kind of blend like a 3D and a 2D kind of movement for one of these bosses. It's like a big mushroom guy that kind of like spins around while you're fighting him, and it just looks really cool in kind of this 2D retro environment. And then yeah, you also you find these statues as you play that upgrade you. I wasn't 100% sure what it was upgrading. You collect like these little yellow mushrooms as you kind of play through the game, and you use those. That's your currency to upgrade. I think it was just upgrading my damage and maybe my health, but I wasn't 100% sure on that. So it's kind of like I would say my biggest critique of the game or the demo is like maybe just give a little bit more tutorial, which I'm sure they will with the full release of the game. But like, let me know what I'm upgrading, or tell me kind of what some of the buttons do. Like there was a lot of trial and error trying to figure out like what some of the weapons did and how much damage they did, things like that. And then my last kind of critique of the game is like I really felt like I should be playing this on the couch, especially with how fluid it is. I kind of felt like maybe I was sitting a little too close, and maybe that's due to the art style. It's kind of like a old school, like 16-bit sort of art style, and it just kind of felt like maybe some of the elements were like quote unquote blurry, but it was really just like because of the art style. So I would love to play this game sitting on the couch, just relaxing, trying to get through the levels. It kind of had like almost like a Super Meat Boy kind of feel to it, but it was definitely had more exploration than Super Meat Boy has. Like there were different rooms I found and all that stuff. So at the end of the day, I know this is a long-winded answer, but I really enjoyed my time with Lone Fungus 2. I thought it was just it did exactly what a demo should do and make me want to play the full game and also to play the first one. I want to check it out. At some point, I will. I'm not even sure when the first one came out because honestly, I've never even heard of Lone Fungus, but now I have, and I enjoyed it quite a bit, Tom.
Well, I've been looking at stuff here, like while you're talking, because first of all, it intrigues the hell out of me. My fiance and I, we love mushrooms, not like taking them. I mean, I'm sure they're fun. I've done one gummy once, just whatever. But but we kind of love like we have like mushroom board games. We have for Valentine's Day, I've gotten her mushroom themed stuff. It's just we just like them. They're very cool. I think mushrooms are freaking dope. Another thing I love are Metroidvanias, right? I've talked about that, and you're talking about this, the whip, the axe that has the arch and the spear. I mean, that's classic Castlevania. Those are the moves, right? So I freaking love to hear that. So I'm looking at this. Lone Fungus 1 came out in 2023, April.
Wow, okay.
And looking at it, so the interesting thing is, you mentioned that it was a prequel. This is more 16-bit than the first one. So that's kind of, I love, like, what was the messenger that would switch from like 16-bit to like 32-bit or something like that?
32,
or maybe, yeah. But I love that they did a prequel with like more pixelated graphics. The first one seems pretty awesome too. Kind of like a lot of people, at least in the reviews, were kind of mentioning, oh, this is like Hollow Knight, but not as hard, maybe, but still really dynamic movement, stuff like that. This sounds like they're kind of like piggybacking off of that with this. This is something I want to check out because this sounds like awesome to me, especially now that you've talked about it. But super cool. Love the look here, and love the banner for Lone Fungus 2. it's got like a really well illustrated version of what was he called? Green Cap?
Green Cap,
Yeah,
yeah.
really well, like super well illustrated version of Green Cap. He's like the mean eyes, and he's like whipping out with the vine. Oh, it looks
Yeah.
dope, man. This is the kind of
Yeah.
game that I love to see. This is awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, super cool. And one thing I also did really like about the game too is that when I entered a room that I maybe couldn't fully access because I didn't have all the abilities, it would pop up with like a question mark and say like climbable vines, like and like stuff like that. I'm like, oh yeah, I can't be here yet. Like that, I didn't have to waste like 10 minutes trying to figure out what the heck to do in this room. So like little stuff like that that I really appreciated in the game. But yeah, I'm looking at some gameplay right now, and there's so much that I didn't even get to that probably is not even in the demo yet. And it's just yeah, it's cool. I gotta check out some Lone Fungus One at some point.
Yeah, I know I will be. So,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm definitely gonna at least play this demo. It sounds freaking awesome. Uh,
yeah,
Now I played a demo as well. I played a game called Through the Nightmares, which
yeah. Tell us.
is from a I guess like a developer called Sandman Team, which I am assuming is based on the main character of this game. So you are the Sandman, right? If you're not familiar with the Sandman, comes into your dreams or whatever, helps you go to sleep, yada yada yada, makes your eyes heavy. In this game, it is a side-scrolling kind of platformer, right? A little bit is difficult. It is a difficult game. You can play it at multiple different difficulties in the demo. Now,
Mm.
the story is pretty neat. I really like the idea here. So, you're the Sandman, and I'm looking here at the website for what they plan for the full game. They're gonna have 3 chapters with probably something like 15 levels each chapter, and each chapter is a different child that's having a nightmare, and you're running through the nightmares and trying to like kind of make sure these kids have like a good night's sleep, right? That's like your job as the Sandman. So that's like
Mm.
first of all like a great premise. Sandman already has like, you know, a lot of cultural significance, not only just the kind of folklore around Sandman, but we've had the great comics, which actually made I thought a pretty good Netflix TV show as well. As well as hopefully maybe a movie at some point. But
Yeah.
this is a great idea. Now the execution, so it is a little bit choppy right now in the demo, but I can't really hold it against it. So I did some digging on this team. They are from Kiev, Ukraine. So they're going through some stuff. I think they plan to release this in 2023, but you know, things Putin happened, and I think
Yeah.
has pushed development. We see this a lot.
Yeah.
Shout out to some certain Flesh and Blood creators, Fabrica, you know, still making content in Ukraine, but did have to stop for a little bit. You know, this is crazy. But anyway, this is a really cool concept. I really love the overall vibe here. Right, the art style feels very nightmarish. You know, it's a game that feels very scary, but like you are but like in like a fantasy way, right? Like in like a fairy tale way, I guess. And I
Mm.
think that's really cool. Now, in terms of the gameplay, it is a platformer. What is the catch there? What does Sandman do that makes him so unique in this world? So you have, and this is very difficult, and also something I haven't really seen much of, where you have a button while you're running through these levels where you can shrink down in size. So
Oh.
and you got to hold it to stay shrunk down in size. It adds this really interesting difficulty because there are certain platforms that will break if you are full sized. So you have to be small to like stay on them. However, you have to jump from one to another, but as the small version, you can't jump that high. So you have to time
Oh.
going back to full size and jumping to get to platforms to get to them, and then you have to, as you land on that one, you have to shrink back down inside so it doesn't break. So that is the kind of hook here, right? This is the difficulty is presented through that challenge. At least in the demo, I'm sure there's more that you access as you go through, and there's different ways. But I found it very challenging. It is a very hard thing to get used to. That is not necessarily a bad thing. I actually really appreciate the creativity here, and because platformers. I mean, since the original Super Mario Bros. I mean, it's like we've had a lot of them. So
Yeah.
and it's kind of funny. It's almost harks back to the original Super Mario Bros. Where you are tiny or you're big, and this one's interesting because you need to get small to be able to do certain challenges throughout the levels. So the game overall, I like the story. I like the concept. I hope that they're able to finish this game. I know it's rough over there in Ukraine, but I think the demo is worth checking out if you want like a really challenging platformer. And the art style is really cool. Not my favorite character design because it's really hard to see what the Sandman is other than a yellow guy running around that has like sand falling off of him, which I think makes sense, but like he could use a little bit more detail, I think, to match the rest of the backgrounds and what you're jumping through. But through the nightmares does seem like it could be has the potential in the full version to be like a really fun platformer, especially with the story. Kind of like the goal of just like beating these nightmares in these child's dreams is such a cool idea, and I think it really works well with the platformer idea as well, right? You have to run through these dreams. Like you can't just show up and beat it. You have to like go and get to the center of like where the bad dream is coming from and to kind of defeat it. So really cool game. I'm interested to see when it will actually come out. I know that they, even on their website, they say, hey, we're having a tough time over here. But that being said, I think there's a lot of potential here, and there's only 4 people on the team. So I want to see where it goes. I'm glad I got to play the demo. I mean, I'm looking here. They originally released gameplay in 2020, and we're in 2024. So like things have, it's a difficult road.
Yeah.
So all that being said, it's worth checking out at least the demo to see if you like it. Hopefully, the demo helps them shore up some maybe like performance issues that it was having when I was playing, but it's hard to say, right?
Yeah, no, it definitely, just looking at some of the gameplay, like it seems, it could be like a little intensive, like they need to optimize a decent amount with the game because of like the way the graphics are. There's a good decent amount of depth to it. Definitely not similar to like Lone Fungus in that kind of art style. It's definitely more, like you said, like on the fantasy side of things. So, yeah, it looks really interesting. Like I'd like, even though I would like to see some more detail with the Sandman, but I really do like how he like pops on the level because the levels are so dark and he pops with that yellow color. And I think it's a super interesting mechanic with the shrinking. And is it growing too, or is it just shrinking with that
So
button?
when you hold the button, you shrink, and then when you let go of the button, you regrow.
Okay, all right, but you're not growing like bigger than where you started.
Yeah.
Or at least in the demo. There's nothing. Maybe there's something in another nightmare that you have to grow and become heavier or something like
At
that.
least in the demo that like I got through, I didn't. There's possible that I missed maybe power ups because there were a couple optional things that, to be honest, were just too hard to get to. I thought that maybe I had to go back and do them. So, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of cool though. But like looking at some stuff from the full game, I assume, it's really neat that the levels are changing by what these children are afraid of, which is really really cool. Like there's a level where you're jumping through traffic, which is really really neat. So it's very cool.
Yeah, and this also, that concept is like opens the door for like, DLC levels, like
Yeah.
they could just keep adding kind of different nightmares, right? Like I feel like the ideas could be endless for that. And yeah, with that mechanic with like shrinking, it's super interesting that like, when you first mentioned it, I was thinking Mario, right? I'm like, okay, like they shrink so they can access new areas, but the fact that like there's a weight to your character
Hmm.
and it also affects your jump, like that is a really cool mechanic that I can see why that would make this game, more difficult than something obviously like Mario. But yeah, no, it's a seems like a really interesting game. And honestly, I was like, when we were deciding which demos to play, I was torn between this one and Lone Fungus 2, and I was like, I'm gonna go with the Fungus, but this one looks really cool. So I'm glad. That it seemed overall like it seemed like you enjoyed it, like other than some optimization issues outside of there, outside of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like it's the reality is it was a demo, and it's hard to commit a lot of time to a demo to get better at a game, which
Yeah.
I can't really hold against the game because if I had the full game, I'm like, well, I have to learn how to be good at this so I could beat the game, right? If I if I run into issues on a demo, I'm just like, okay, well, I get it. I understand what I need to do. I'm just not very good at it, and I can't really spend a lot of
Yeah.
time to try to get really good at it. But
Yeah.
it was like a really, to me, I mean, I can't tell if it's the most original idea, but that concept felt very unique to me and definitely gave it a different angle that I don't get in platformers a lot. And I think the story is like, at least the lore of Sandman and the goal here to like fight these nightmares is just awesome. I think that's like such a
Yeah.
good story that you can just build upon.
Yeah, and I think it's like super relatable,
Mm-hmm.
to like almost everybody. And honestly, this is like one of those games where like if I saw it at PAX East, I'd be like, all right, this I have to play this. Like this is one of those that I have to try out because like the concept just seems so cool. But yeah, awesome. Those are the demos.
Hell
Eh?
yeah. Hell yeah. I mean, they were
Yeah.
cool. I love a good demo. It's a nice. I mean, we'll probably do more of these as the podcast progresses. And what are we at? 17 now? This is 17 or 18 maybe.
18, I think.
18.
I think 18.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. We could sign up for the
Whoa.
military.
Yeah.
We do have some listener questions now. If you want to submit a listener question, you can post it in the Discord or message us individually, Kmore. Uh, but
Either
yeah,
way.
either way, we'll take them. We'll take them. The
Yeah.
first one comes from Capolo, aka the Swiss Prophet, aka the Notorious B.I.G. What's the lore behind the names Fresh and Juice? Do you want to take Juice first, or should I talk about Fresh?
Go with fresh. We'll go in order of the show name.
So, I started playing this game called Flesh and Blood. I've talked about it on the show, obviously, and I decided I want to create content for that game, and I wanted to do podcasting because I love podcasting, obviously, and I was toying with different names, and because I wanted the podcast to kind of start while I was still learning the game, so that like if I kept doing it, people can go back and see how dumb I was. I think that is kind of fun, and people have. I my favorite character in Flesh and Blood is called Levia, and in the first episode, you can go back and I say Levia, and I do not pronounce it correctly, which is funny. It's funny. I'm glad when people bring it up. But when I just wanted something that rhymed with Flesh and Blood, like or like a slant rhyme. So I was like, okay, what can I do? This, nah, that's making sense. This isn't making sense. Okay, fresh and flesh. That's kind of cool. It's like I could be fresh, like that's me. And
Yeah.
I was like, buds. Okay, buds. They're my friends. I want to create friends in this game. People think it's a weed podcast. It's not, but whatever you want to do. So
Yeah.
I started Fresh and Buds. And then basically, I used to just call myself Fresh. Just like I was like, I'm your host Tommy, but you can call me Fresh. And then it's like I'm your host Tommy Fresh, and you were all of my buds. So that was the I guess the Fresh thing. I don't know. What about
Yeah.
Juice?
There it is. Juice.
I remember
Yeah.
Juice.
So, do you? All right. So
Yeah.
let me know if I'm remembering this correctly. Uh, so I think it originated on another podcast that I was on with our buddy Bags, and he's written in some listener questions. That podcast is called Just Because, and essentially, at the start of each episode, when I got introduced, when our buddy Bags would introduce me, I would just say random names. So like it got to a point where I was writing down like just random things that popped in my head of like who I was. I'd like be like Morgan Freeman's dad, aka the Saw Ripper, or like just random like things that just didn't make sense. And one of those things was Matty Juice, and for whatever reason, like that always just sounded nice to me. So I just like I've said it on like multiple of those episodes, like "What's up? I'm Matty Juice." And one of them also that I always loved as well. For those who don't know, one of my prior names or usernames was the Real Spoons. So it was like a whole like kind of cutlery thing, and I always enjoyed the name the Cutlery Kid. I always thought it was a great name for like a serial killer too, of like maybe
Yeah.
someone that used cutlery, but like the Cutlery Kid, you know. So that was a popular name on that show as well. But yeah, that's where Matty Juice originated from what I remember. Was just kind of a random thought. And I also remember how this show came about with Fresh Juice. We were golfing, I believe. And Tommy came up to me. He's like, hey, we should do. Wait, was it golfing? Is this right? Or was it before golfing? What,
I think
regardless.
I texted you, and then we talked about it because we golfed like soon after. I was just
Okay,
like,
yeah.
I was just thinking about, how much fun it would be to like kind of have a podcast, because we've podcasted together, but we never had a podcast together, right? Like one
Yeah.
of our own. And I was just like, you know what, we both are the most, we have some friends that will do some content creation, and cousins and stuff like that. But I think at this point we're the most consistent content creators, right? We do it the most often. So I was just like, well, what could we talk about? I was just thinking to myself, and I was like, well, we both love video games. I'm more into the indie games, but you also like them. And it would be kind of cool to kind of just talk about indie games, because I think everybody's talking about the AAA games. And I'm sure there's a
Yeah.
lot of indie game stuff too. But, kind of scouring the internet, there wasn't any like anything of note to me. And I mean, I'm sure I'm missing some stuff, but that was like truly indie game focused, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, well, what would we call it? Well, I am Tommy Fresh, and he's Matty Juice. And I was like, oh, Fresh Juice. That's awesome.
There you go.
Yeah. And I was like, and I texted Matt, and the rest is history. Now we're, the
Yeah.
biggest podcasters in Poland by far.
Yeah, we are, and it's unfortunate we're switching to trees now, though.
Yeah.
That's the new focus, so we'll have to come up with a new name. But we
Okay.
also do. Oh, what you like fresh juice for trees?
Well, I mean, where
We
do
could do it.
oranges come from? I mean, a
That's
tree.
true. That's true. Speaking of oranges, anyone who meets us at PAX East is going to have a little bit of a surprise that we're not talking about just yet. But and it's not an orange, not an actual orange.
Can't
Okay,
be.
so anyway, but and next question we have coming in here directly to the DMs, Mr. Kmore asking Thomas Fresherson and Matthew Juicington, like those are some new names as well. Now that January is over, can we get the best game from the podcast of that month? And at the end of the year, all 12 games to see the podcast game of the year. I really like this idea personally. I do track all of our ratings, but obviously that doesn't mean it is our favorite game of the month. But Tommy, you wanna tell the people your favorite game from January?
I gotta look back at what was in January
I can
specific.
run through the list. I
Okay,
have it
yeah.
right here. So we've got starting off January 3rd, we started with the Norp Apologue. Then moving into Just King, Time Survivors, The Cub, and last week's episode, Rin, The Last Child.
There's no doubt. I mean, January is a pretty easy. I mean, I have to assume it's the same for you because it was our first double certified fresh juice we've ever had. The Norp Apolog, no brainer.
Yeah.
January goes to the Norps. We're Norping in January.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're Norping in January. We're Morping in February. What's going to come in March? We don't know. But yeah, definitely the Norp Apolog for me. At first, I didn't. I kind of forgot we did the Norp Apolog, and I was like, "Oh, it's the Cub." Like, it was probably the Cub, but Norp Apolog by far is going to be the game for January. But I'm excited. I think we got some really cool ones coming up in February, so I'm excited to see what we choose at the end of the month. But is it
I
time for
mean,
the rec?
Yeah, it is time for the
Oh,
rec. I mean, I just think 2024 is, I mean, starting off hot with the Norp Apolog. I mean, I don't
yeah.
think we're going to have a lot of double certified fresh juices, in general. Certainly not every month. So we might have only a couple big ones that really make it really hard. But we'll have to remember. We'll have to put a note in the Excel sheet. That was the January game of the month or whatever.
Yeah.
So we can look back. But yeah, the rec room. This is where we recommend stuff, but also if anybody wants to submit questions, I do have to mention again, check out the Discord. It's a great way to do it. The rec room is where we recommend something that maybe isn't a indie game, something that we would like you to check it out, and then we say our goodbyes. What are you recommending this week, Matt?
Yeah, so from my side of things, the thing that I'm going to be recommending is actually a game. I don't even know. This might have been on the Rec Room prior, and I apologize, but it's a game called Enshrouded. This is a game. This is actually, I believe, technically an indie game, and it's essentially if you guys have ever played Valheim, it is similar to Valheim in a way where it's, kind of got a similar vibe, but it has better graphics and you can still terraform the entire world. I've been really enjoying playing it. I haven't played enough of it. I really do want to play more of it, but I've been enjoying playing Enshrouded. I know it kind of came out similar to Pal World. We actually had a discussion about it in the Discord, talking about whether Power World was kind of going to overshadow it, and it seems like it has. It really does seem like it. I didn't think it really would. I thought it was kind of in different audiences in a way, even though they're both kind of survival games. But I have seen a lot of love for Enshrouded though, so I definitely recommend picking it up at some point whenever the Pal World craze kind of settles down a bit. I think a lot of people that play Pal World will probably like Enshrouded, and definitely if you're a big Valheim fan, check it out. And if anyone ever wants to play, hit me up in the Fresh Juice Discord because I'm always, I'm just kicking it solo right now. But what's cool is you can start a single player world and just bring your character over to a multiplayer one without having to restart. So, really like that as well. So, yeah, let me know if anyone wants to play. But Enshrouded is the rec for the week for me.
Is that the one I watched you stream where it was a little bit more fantasy-esque? Or
Yes, yeah, it's very like fantasy-esque. It gives me like Lord of the Ringsy kind of vibes, which is probably why I like it. I just like I honestly I'm probably gonna set aside like a few hours just to build in the game and just build something really cozy. But yeah, it's been great. The exploration in the game is really fantastic, which is typically what I like in those style games. So but yeah, what about you, Tommy? What do you reckon to the people?
I do want to say that did remind me that I did see a bud from the Flesh and Blood community talk about that on Twitter. Sin on stream or Sin Fab TCG sung its praises on Twitter. I said this game rocks. So I guess I'm gonna have to check it out. But
Yeah.
the other day, so last week or earlier, I guess late last week after we had recorded this podcast, I found myself missing one of my favorite voices in podcasting. Now, I used to play Magic the Gathering. I no longer play Magic the Gathering. I'm all Flesh and Blood all the time. And one of the things I loved while I was in the Magic the Gathering community for 10 plus years, almost 15 years, was a podcast called Limited Resources. It kind of talked about a certain format in the game. And it had two hosts, LSV, Luis Scott Vargas, who is one of the best players in the world, and then Marshall Sutcliffe. Now, Marshall Sutcliffe had started that podcast because he loved that format of the game, and ended up being a commentator for the game. And now the game does not support really competitive play, so he doesn't do any commentating anymore, but he still does that podcast. But I used to listen to it all the time, every week, one of my favorite podcasts, and he just had the best voice. He really made you care about things, right? And like his voice was smooth, had like a nice timbre, and it was just awesome. And I miss it because I can't really, I can listen to that podcast, but I really don't care about Magic anymore. However, I remembered, when I was missing it, I remembered he also started like a second YouTube channel because he loves watches. And I like watches too. So I was like, oh, I wonder how that YouTube channel is going. So his YouTube channel is called Wristwatch Revival. I checked it out and I watched some of his videos that have millions of views. And I understand why, because he's super good at reviving these wristwatches. He repairs them. He finds them on like eBay, or some of his viewers will tip him off on one, and he tries to do his best to fix them up, as a hobby and resell them. And he talks throughout the whole thing. You don't see his face or anything like that. He's just doing it. And he's talking. He's making you care about watches. I go into the comment sections. I'm watching this thing. The comment sections are maybe 10%. That watch is awesome. My father had that watch. I want that watch. Blah, 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 blah. The other 90% are, I don't even like watches, but I watch these videos before bed every night because they're so relaxing and you're just so good at this. And it's just so cool to watch. And I got to say, I like watches, but I'm not like super into them like that. Yeah. It makes you want to be because I'm just like watching these videos or even just listening to them. And I'm just like, this is the best content. And I totally understand why he has almost 800,000 subscribers. And some of his videos have millions of views, which is crazy for a person fixing a watch, which is, that's just what it is. And then I was like curious because, I create content. I have a Patreon over at Fresh and Buds. It's always interesting to look at other people's Patreons. I take a look at his Patreon. You know how much he's making per video he puts out?
Me.
He has it set up per video. He's making almost $7,000 per video.
Oh my God. Plus all the ad money.
That's money.
On the video. Yeah.
Obviously I understand that there's definitely a cost to like buying those watches and like trying to fix them up. And like he does an amazing job. I'm not trying to discount it. That's just incredible, right? That's like real talent and is being rewarded, which is really cool. But I definitely recommend pop on one of the videos. You don't even have to fully pay attention, but you'll end up kind of wanting to based on how he's talking about these watches. And like you're like, oh, what's a movement? What's that? Like, and it's just so cool. I just love it. So Wristwatch Revival, Marshall Sutcliffe.
Yeah.
He's just there's something about that voice. It's just perfect, and he's a great talker. He's got the gift of the gab. Yeah. So
it's just it goes to show you too, like you can be successful with anything on YouTube or just content creation, Like there's people out there that they're like, oh, I can't do that. And then maybe they're really good at something, maybe like fixing watches. Yeah. And then there you go. Set up a camera, talk for an hour, fix a watch, and if you're good at talking, it could work out. But that's all. I love seeing channels like this. It reminds me of like the lock picking lawyer, if you've ever seen him. Yeah, like his videos, sometimes I'll just have him on just because it's like relaxing. They're a lot shorter because he's always like picking the lock pretty quickly. But like, I don't know anything about locks. I don't know what the hell he's talking about, but I was like, this is pretty satisfying to watch. So I will definitely check this out. It's right up my alley.
Well, I'll send you one that I really enjoyed that like I think that is also really relaxing. You just watch it tonight before you go to bed, maybe, or just pop it on, hey.
Yeah.
But this has been a great episode again, Matty. We're just killing it, dude. We're just like out here. We're slaying. Where can people find you?
Yeah, if you want to check me out outside of the show, at Matty Gorm, GORM on all the socials and everything. Feel free to check me out on Twitch. I haven't been really producing a lot of content lately just because work's been nuts and I just been too exhausted, to be honest. I put all my energy into this show when I can. So, yeah, but if you want to check me out outside the show, feel free to do it at Matty Gorm. What about you, Tommy?
Amen.
Tell the people.
You can continue to find me on Twitter at FreshBloodsPod. I know I tweet a lot about Flesh and Blood, but it is an amazing game and has had a huge, big growth moment the past year. And, if you're into trading cards at all, or even into board games. I meet a lot of people in that game that have come from just board games into Flesh and Blood. Check it out. Got a great podcast. I interview all kinds of people from the community, and it's a great time. But please check out the Discord. That's the best place to hang out. Talk about indie games. I have 2 Discords. I have my Fresh and Buds one, and I have that one, and those are pretty much the only 2 I pay attention to. So if you put something in there, I'm gonna go look at it and be like, yeah, no, that game's awesome, or that game's the worst I've ever played. It's dog shit. No.
Yeah. Trees rule.
Trees rule. Yeah. But until next time, folks, this has been the Fresh Juice Podcast. Stay fresh, you juice heads.
See ya.